So, I mean, it's just the same thing as any employer and any employee. You know, the city employs a number of people, and then every year we expect them to perform certain duties and to report against the performance of those duties. The same thing. I've put out a platform to tell the citizens of Regina where I intend to go as mayor of Regina. When I get there, I have 200,000 plus bosses that are expecting me to perform. So what should I do? When I get there, the first thing I should do is to outline a detailed plan for what I as mayor will be doing based on this platform I've put out there. And of course, the same way like every other person at the city of Regina has to report to their immediate supervisors on how they've performed, I have to do the same thing. There must be a regular reporting of the mayor against each of those key items that I've said I'm going to tackle. So whether it's the pension fund, whether it's the establishing a transparency office, ensuring that we have momentum on infrastructure planning for the future. Those are things that I believe the citizens deserve to know how well I've performed. And this is going to be it's going to be open. It's going to be transparent, open, accessible information. So I intend to put out what I intend to achieve and how far we've gone at regular periods during the year. So hopefully that's what I intend to do to ensure that people are kept aware. I'm reporting to my over 200,000 bosses on a regular basis. Absolutely. We face a housing crisis. Housing is one of our fundamental economic issues right now. It's one of the most important ones. It's the one that comes up. Like I said, we have a shortage of skilled labor, and we can't get people here to stay. We can't retain the kind of skilled labor we need if we don't have houses to put them in. So this is a huge problem, not just social, but also economic. We have people that are coming out of school, universities, out of other educational institutions that want to stay in Saskatchewan. If they can't afford to buy a home or rent a place because the prices are too high, then we're going to lose those people to more affordable centers where they can get a good job as well. So it's very important that we keep them here. So I think there's certain things we can do quickly. This issue is nothing new under the sun. It's been seen in various jurisdictions across Canada. So there are lots of solutions out there. What we need to do is to be proactive, ensure that we have the political will to look at those solutions out there and decide what works best for Regina. One of the things we can do very quickly is to look at the restrictive zoning bylaws. If there's something that we can take off that makes sense to help spur the supply of affordable or attainable housing, and that will be one of the first things, because I know that there's so many things that we have in our books that, outdated. So I think we can go back and say, what can we get off those books? How can we, reframe some of those bylaws to ensure that we're increasing supply? The other thing is to make sure that we're not passing or putting unnecessary red tape in the way of developers, because one of the things I've heard as well during this campaign period is that at times it's so hard to get response from the city of Regina when you want to develop a parcel of land, and that of course affects cost that's passed down to homeowners. So we have to start looking at simple things we can do and then more complex things we can do. There are lots of programs out there. I've seen thousands of them. I can go through each of them right now. But the important thing is that we need the political will to deal with this issue. It is not elusive to us. We can deal with it. I think part of the reason why I'm very big on long-term thinking is because this issue was caused by short-term insights. We saw the trend of the economy. We were converting, our city council was converting apartments to condos. And now we're below 1% in terms of the rental vacancy rate. We're at 0.6, the lowest in Canada. So we saw this coming. So that's part of the short-term thinking. It looks good economically, but socially we flopped, and that has affected the economy. So it's all interrelated. I've had the opportunity to sit down with, very early in my campaign, one of the things I did was to go into some homes, and we started what I call the home halls. And very early in my campaign, one of the things I heard was people were concerned about their safety. So I did have the opportunity to sit down with Police Chief Troy Hagan and try to understand some of the issues we had here in Regina around crime and safety, as well as some of the strategies that have been put in place by the police system. I have to say, and I've also spent time reviewing the 4-year rolling plan, strategic plan that the police has put in place to address issues around policing. I believe that the Regional Police Service is headed in the right direction. There's a strong focus on crime prevention. I think that is very important because the root cause of crime has to be dealt with, and those are socioeconomic issues. And when you look at where the police is going to in terms of the strategic plan, and in terms of the discussion I had with the police chief, you find out that there's a real recognition and a real programming being built or already in existence to tackle crime prevention. So I think we're headed in the right direction. I think that's the right strategy. I would emphasize prevention over punishment. But I think that's where it all starts. People that do the crime will do the time. But most importantly, we try to avoid the whole system of having the police in place, the whole concept of having effective policing in place is to keep people safe. Now, private versus public, for me, there's never been any confusion. And I say this because many times when we get into these debates, we forget the fact that we deal with issues at home and we deal with issues at home in a very common sense manner. This is what I want people to understand. It's the same thing I would do at home. If my wife wakes up in the morning and tells me, Meka, the sink is broken, go fix it. I'm going to go to the sink, and if I can fix it, I'll fix it. It's going to save us some money. If I can't fix it, I'm going to call a plumber to come in and fix it. And if I'm smart, I'm going to learn 1 or 2 things from that plumber. So the next time my wife tells me that the sink is broken, then I can do 1 or 2 things to make sure that we save some money before we get somebody that might be able to handle the more complex things. The whole idea is this. If we can do something well, then let's do it in-house. If we can't do it well, or we need some more experience to make sure that we become more proficient in handling those kind of issues, let's get the private sector to do it, or let's get somebody from outside. And if we're smart and we're really interested in innovation and in getting better as a city, then we'll learn 1 or 2 things. So for me, there's never been a confusion. If we can get the same quality job at a cheaper price, that is what we do every day in our lives. So why should we be, this is not an issue for me. So I want to say this again. I'm just all about common sense. If one solution is cheaper in the long term or provides the best value to the city, then I'll look at it. I'm not ideological. I want us to ensure that, and peat trees, some have done very well, some have not done very well. There are lots of studies out there on peat trees. Some have succeeded, some have failed. But I think what's important is that you deal with this kind of projects on a case-by-case basis. And that's what I'm going to do as mayor. If anybody can provide me with sound facts that this is going to work or this is not going to work, then that is what I'm going to ensure that I live by, the facts, and only the facts. But I want people to, be open-minded, because I'm going to be very open-minded as mayor of Regina, and ensure that we take decisions based on sound facts. I will do my homework, and I expect everybody to do theirs, but that's really the way we can. At the end of the day, everybody, and I believe this, everybody that works at the city, everybody that, sits on council, we might have our differences of opinion, but I'm hoping that at the end of the day, what we want is rendering the best services to the residents that we serve. Of course, it's a priority. I can't tell you how many times my street has been neglected. So yes, we need to find, and this is not just about doing the same old thing. I've talked a lot about innovation. I believe strongly in innovation. When you look at places, and I lived around the world, so I lived in Europe, I lived in Asia. I've seen, new technology come into play, I was a young child, but I've traveled to those countries many times as an adult, and I've seen some new technologies. I schooled in Europe, so I've seen some new technologies that have come into play in terms of how we can do better. So the question for me is, how affordable, again, it comes to a budget question. What do we need to do, and how much do we have to do it? And how can we maximize our resources to make sure that every dollar stretches as far as possible. So I am very much supportive of recycling in general. The system that the city has put in place, was planning to put in place in 2013 and expand to condos and other residential units in 2015 is a commingled system. So that means you're going to dump all the acceptable recycling materials into one bin, and then it has to be sorted out before it has to be taken to be sorted out and processed. Now, I've seen more effective systems where at source it's sorted. So it depends on what model would be best. But I've seen, when I lived in Europe again, I lived in an apartment that was where you built in sorting bins for different things within the building. So you had all that sorted from source, and that saved money. You know, you don't have to take it to another, processing plant to sort it out. So these are some of the things that, I don't know if that was the best system. I don't know how they arrived at that discussion. I think we should encourage recycling. As much as possible, it should be cheap so that people are encouraged to recycle, because we're not a very recycle-friendly city yet. And I think that's something that we have to change in terms of our culture as a city. So I want to see, I support recycling. If this is the best system, I do not know. Again, if it's about cost, I want to make sure that we are having the best service available at the cheapest cost possible. I believe in transparency, so I'll tell you what I believe. I believe that everybody should know the criteria for sitting on any committee or board. That has to be spelled out, and it has to be done in a very transparent way. People must see that. Now, I don't believe that you need to provide all the data on applicants. You have to provide the data on the final boards that were chosen, and if people want to know why they were chosen, then that information will be made available to them. But at the application stage, I think there are privacy issues that you want to respect. It's the same way when you apply for a job. I don't make the applicants for any job I'm filling public. But once the person has been chosen, then I make it public. And if anybody wants, a reason why this person was chosen over the other person, then we can provide that information. What is important is, how was this board elected? What are the criteria? And then who got on the board and why? If we can be transparent, I don't think that will be an issue. But I don't think that we need to hold an election for the regional library board. That is more expensive. It's going to take more time, and I really don't think that that's necessary. We already have lots of public offices, elections for the school board, elections for the city council, for the mayor. That's sufficient. So I think that people should have confidence in the folks they elect to these boards or to these councils or to city council to make the right decisions. But what is important, and I stress again, is that it must be a transparent process. People must understand exactly what the process is, what the requirements, what the criteria are to sit on any of these boards. And when people get the job, if they want to know why that person got the job, then that should be made available to citizens. So that's what I believe.